Welcome to SiegeCenter, our show where we break down everything that's happening inside of our 6 esports. My name is Highbear, here with my co-host Happy, and this is day 5 of Reload Rio. For our first game today, Happy, I think you're going to take this one, eh?
Yeah, it's M80 versus Cloud9 in the game of the day that literally meant nothing once Cloud9 won a single round. M80 needed to get a 7-0 to even have a chance at making it to the playoffs. They couldn't get that done. So once Cloud9 got on the board, we saw Caveira come out. We saw Cloud9 get very silly. They ended up getting up to 4, though M80 would eventually take it. And as was established at the start of the day, they will be paying, or Cloud9 will be paying for Brazilian barbecue tonight as a result of taking the L. Happy birthday to Gunner. This was your birthday gift. Unfortunately, we couldn't quite afford a playoff spot for you this year, but we'll do our best for next year. As for right now, both of these North American hopefuls are headed home, and very disappointing to say the least, given all the promise that M80 showed and how many points Cloud9 had coming into the last couple days with some matchups I'm sure they thought were very, very winnable. But still, a good effort from both to close out their time here.
You said it, Happy. I'm very disappointed in M80 this event. Not because of the team and the way they're playing, but just the way that they chose to approach the event. They didn't really seem to have a good understanding of the system, and it ends up costing them. They don't qualify for playoffs despite looking really solid throughout, and they look better than this result. I am excited for what's to come. But following that match, the Nothing Burger, we had the game of the day, the thing that we were the most excited to see. FearX versus BDS, and holy shit, Happy, holy fucking shit, they did it. FearX are the real deal, straight up. A great defensive start for them, running up some numbers. Starting to get a little scary in the mid half of the game. We'll see over the next couple of rounds here. All of a sudden, BDS get the numbers up, and you see right there in the top of your screen, 5-3 was the scoreline, but a well-timed timeout from Dark, and suddenly, the next thing you know, FearX wake up on the attack.
Yeah, they didn't lose a single attacking round after that timeout. A 4-0 sweep to respond to the 4-0 sweep from BDS to go from 3-1 to 3-5. And I got a little worried that this was the same thing that was happening yesterday against Falcons, and we were about to see a FearX team with so much potential collapse on 2 days in a row in a much more winnable game than they had yesterday here up against BDS. But that well-timed timeout from Dark was exactly what the squad needed. And the attacks got so much better. They did a much better job at getting into the building even when they were facing a lot of resistance from the BDS side. They went 0 for 4 on their attacks yesterday. Needed to see a lot more out of their attacks to be convinced they could really get something done in the playoffs. That's exactly what they did today, and they ended things off with perhaps their best attack yet.
It was immaculate. And we actually pulled up this clip for you because you need to see what we're talking about. Check this out. Good boy over here. He's tossing in the Ying towards Pebbles, but he's not pushing off of it. You see him sprinting away because the idea is to pull the BDS defenders over towards Pebbles while the entire team hits the opposite side. You see Rin storming through, picking up a couple of kills. The whole team is over here. They're working together. They're collapsing on site, and it is unbelievably clean. A little bit of a fight comes through. Gets a little scary in the middle there, but Rin survives. He tucks in a corner. He uses his util, and Lazmo feels forced to run away. The entirety of BDS trying to defend this site from the floor below. The entry's so explosive upstairs, they couldn't even stay on the same damn floor, Happy. And despite good info in sight, some cams, there's so much chaos going on in the comms, they can't find where the bomb is going down. They're able to stick. Neffy gets it down, and next thing you know, FearX, they set up themselves up in a massive advantage post-plant. They've got the Ks going in chat. They're letting them know that they're having a good laugh about what's going on, and FearX will be on main stage. Unbelievable performance out of them today, and I'm so excited to see them playing in front of a Brazilian crowd on Friday.
It's going to be really exciting, and that was really nice to see. Those big utility-based executes were what they were missing yesterday against Falcons. They got a lot of the map for free. They didn't take it fast enough. They needed to get into sight better, and they really, really did their best to make sure those woes were a little bit less prevalent going into their playoff match coming up on Friday. Team Secret also took on Wildcard to see if either of these teams could sneak into the playoffs, and I said what I said yesterday. I will hold my L. Wildcard got their legit win, and they got it in a very dominant fashion. Consulate defense is not that difficult. but a 6-0 half is a 6-0 half, and a 7-2 win over a team that had up till now looked pretty competitive in all of their games is a massive statement for a team that really needed it, High Bear.
They look good. I mean, I've been saying it this whole time. I think Wildcard are actually here to play. And today was a little bit less of a team performance. There was one player in particular who stood out, who was doing phenomenally throughout, getting them rounds that maybe they didn't necessarily deserve. But Wildcard will take him nonetheless. Happy. Tell me about Dash.
Oh, Dash was doing wonderful work today. He ends up with the first kill in this round onto June, but he's still down 2 players, and so it's time to get active. Everybody knows this about competitive Siege. When you're down man count on the defensive side and the other team's getting into your sight, it's time for you to make a play, and Dash recognizes this. Info in the sight with the yellow pings. That's the important of the yellow pings and the team information. Through the sends wall, he gets the shutdown on the plant. He killed another teammate over there as well. Still, though, 20 seconds, the case to get picked back up, and Dash is waiting next to it. Mowgli does do this. That wasn't great, and that's the problem with what was happening on Secret. It felt like they were making a lot of silly mistakes, but you leave it to Dash to capitalize. He created this opportunity. Low time. Of course, Team Secret are going to be panicking, and Dash is the greatest player in the server today. Had a phenomenal performance, not just baiting for kills, impact frags like the ones we just saw there. Doing a wonderful job creating his own opportunities for the squad. That wasn't even only the only play that he made today. There were so many good plays that Dash made today that High Bear and I said, well, let's do the Dash clutch, and we were thinking about 2 completely different round-altering plays that Dash made on the defensive side. So, just goes to show how good of a game this guy had today.
He looks great, man. I was really happy with it. I'm happy to see Wildcard making playoffs for the first time since the org has made their way back into the NAL, I believe. And yeah, they're looking really solid. I expect to see them maybe even upsetting some teams that have been mainstays at LANs in the past and making their way to these events going forwards. I hope to see them more. They're an exciting team, and the storylines I can really get behind. Following that game, though, after that one, G2 versus DZ. DZ needed to win this game in order to have a chance at qualifying for the main stage. But happy the lights were just a little too bright today. They managed to get themselves into a decisive position off the start, running up the scoreline. I believe the score ended up being 5-2 at one point, but despite being so close, G2 battled back. They woke up and decided to fight. Dark Zero, they just could not close it out. G2 ends up taking it, guaranteeing that neither team would make it to the main stage, both of them home at the end of this game. Meaning the next match, Furia versus FaZe, was going to be the decider of the last team going to playoffs at this event. But I am just disappointed. I feel like DZ Happy had a great tournament overall. They looked solid throughout, and possibly like one of the strongest teams there. But despite it all, it isn't enough. They cannot get into playoffs at this point. They didn't play the format right. And I mean, it's the story that a lot of teams here are facing today.
Yeah, a Team Secret, another one you talk about where it felt like they were better than their result. No matter who loses Furia FaZe, we haven't gotten into that yet, but that's another example of teams better than the results they ended up with. And so it seems like we're having a lot of those in this case where you're tasked with getting a win, a game that looks winnable towards the end of the tournament where you've been looking great so far. Secret had a great win. Their only loss was against a pretty good team, and they had some very convincing wins along the way. Same goes for Dark Zero. Only lost to the best team of the event so far, W7M, and it was an OT. This one kind of came out of nowhere because G2 looked in worse form than everybody DZ had already been beating so far through the event, and it ended up they had like a massive advantage, and then they kind of threw that away. So really disappointing to see that happen for Dark Zero, but a lot of hope for the DZ fans out there given how good they looked at this event. It is a weird format, awkward to get adjusted to. Once they're back to the regular circuit, I'm sure they will be looking just fine. And finally, for the last game of the day, the Brazilian showdown between Furia and FaZe. It did not disappoint in terms of the individual rounds, but in the grand scheme of things, Furia looked like they kind of just took over today, High Bear.
I was blown away. Furia are here, defending SI champions are out. FaZe no longer any opportunity to play in front of the home crowd in Rio. and they just looked phenomenal. Furia, they just could not be stopped. The first half of the game in particular, Keys was going nuclear. You see this, we're in round 4 and he's already on 10 kills. Can you believe your eyes? And it just continues to be racked up. That wasn't the only thing we saw. They were really solid as a team, and KZ was the Terminator today, making his way into the building. There was a second player who kind of helped out a little bit with the fragging in the second half, JV92. We're going to dive into that in a moment. But overall, Furia, like, I feel like they're back happy. They've been down, they've been out, but here they are. They're ready to play, looking like they can hop into the main stage games on Friday and storm through a couple of their opponents.
Yeah, and the most dangerous thing we said about this Furia team, especially when they're in peak form, is that anybody on any given day is going to punish you. And we saw that through this whole tournament. At times, Herds was the best player in the tournament. At times, KZ, especially earlier on in this game, was looking unstoppable, like the raid boss we know he can be. Felipox has won an MVP on an earlier day of this event. And like you mentioned at the very end, and like I'll let you get into now, JV92 had 2 of the most amazing plays back to back in the tournament so far.
Round changing plays was the name of the game today, and we see this. They're in a massive disadvantage this round, and I'm highlighting JV here, but Nade also does an excellent job. You see him tucked in behind the bookshelf, refusing to engage, and the fact that he keeps himself alive so long puts Furia in a bit of time pressure towards the end of the round that lets JV do his thing. And what a thing JV ends up doing. We see these jiggles continuing, refusing to engage. Excellent work out of Nade. Here's JV swinging down white stairs. He picks up the first, repositions, gets ready. He knows that his time is low, so he swings off of it, picks up Vita King, and recognizes that he can tuck, getting that round over the line, 1 round closer to getting things done for them. And we hop into this next round. Again, a similar situation. Down numbers on this mid-floor site. And JV, he just plays around his teammates so well. It's Nade and JV again, the same sort of situation. Nade's got a Deimos track on his position. He's stuck in a corner. He's being pinched by players. But here's JV to help. Lower white, hiding in a smoke cloud, lurking like a freaking shark happy, and he springs through the cloud, manages to pick the player off upper white, takes down a second, flipping the round on its head. Suddenly, Furia with the advantage, unwinnable for Vita King. I mean, what can you say? What can you do against a team who's playing like that?
You really can't do anything. At a certain point, it's like FaZe are doing everything right. They're getting an opening pick. They're taking the control they need quickly. And this is why it's so scary to play Furia right now. Because if the individuals are going to be able to do this, if people are going to be able to play off of each other, which 2 rounds in a row where JV is only able to make those plays because of Nade trusting his teammates, if they are continuing to play with that unstoppable 5-man synergy, maybe they win the tournament. Like, maybe. I know there are teams who've looked in better form across the whole thing. I didn't forget that we're fresh off of seeing them get 7-2'd on Club by Dark Zero, who didn't even make the playoffs, which they were, I would say, a playoff caliber team. But still, I'm pushing a narrative here. I'm not forgetting that. I'm not forgetting those things, but it still just looks like the way they played today, the ceiling is so high that I think in terms of their ceiling, it's probably the highest of anyone at the event. And if they can keep finding that ceiling, especially with the Rio crowd at their backs like I'd imagine it will be, this is going to be an exciting playoff series to watch, because who is stopping them? That's the question you posed, and I still don't have an answer for you.
I have maybe one suggestion. As we get into these playoffs, I think that we have some very strong teams, and there's one team in particular who has stood out to me this entire time. Take a look at the bracket here. W7M has been the team this tournament. They are terrifying. People don't know how to handle them. I can't express how good these guys have looked. They're the only team to go flawless across the group stage. And they didn't even play that many games in group stage. They were only allowed to play 3 matches because they were so good that teams were genuinely afraid to pick them, to the point where they didn't even play their 4th match. They just got to go and sit by the pool on Wednesday or on Tuesday, whatever day it was. They just went and sat by the pool because nobody wants to take on the smoke, because they know they'll lose. They know W7M are the real deal. Unstoppable performance. But that's just one side of the bracket. And on the other side of the bracket, there are 4 teams: FearX, CAG, Wildcard, and help me out, Happy.
And Elevate.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And elevate.
So,
and among those 4 teams, we will see another one of them making the grand final. Happy, who's it going to be?
We have to see one of them making the grand final. That has to happen. There are those 4 teams, and one of them has to get there, and nothing else can happen. I'll tell you what, it's definitely going to be exciting for the quarters and the semis, because I think it's 3 teams who are still desperately looking to prove themselves. Nobody on that side of the bracket has beaten a playoff team up to this point in their tournament. They haven't even really beaten, like, the best win we've seen from that side of the bracket, I want to say, is Wildcard beating Secret. Maybe it's CAG beating Liquid or Fearex beating BDS that they played today. But we haven't seen any of them. They've all taken a big loss at least once, and they've all taken losses to teams who we assumed would be, semifinals, grand finals contenders. But now these guys are the semi and grand finals contenders. So I personally, if I had to pick who's going to win the whole bracket overall, I do just believe in the Furia aura. Is what I would say if I didn't believe that APAC is on top. They have always been on top. They will top again, and you guys will all learn to respect that Fearex or CAG. I honestly don't even care which one. I think Fearex looks better right now, so I'll say Fearex. But I think they all look pretty solid, and I'm gonna be rooting them on pretty heavy. I will not make my biases. I will make my biases clear. I do think, though, that in terms of most likely to make it to grand final, probably wild card, but I'm gonna say it's a pretty simple 3-0, maybe 3-1 for whoever's on that top side of the bracket. If only because I just don't trust an APAC team in a semifinal. They've hurt me before, and I'm worried they're gonna hurt me again.
Immaculate performance throughout the tournament by a lot of these teams so far. I'm excited to get to see these guys on main stage. I did notice, Happy, that you left out one of the 3 APAC teams on that side of the bracket.
No, I didn't.
But I digress. I can't remember their name anyways.
Yeah, I said 2 of them. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for watching this final episode of Siege Show at the group stage. Not the final episode of the show. We will be back for playoffs, but of the group stage. It was a great run so far. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in this week, and for all the kind comments down below. We appreciate them. We do read them all. And yeah, we will not see you guys tomorrow, but we'll be back Friday for more coverage. The 12-hour day, all 4 semifinal matches. Expect us there, maybe a little lower energy. I've been High Bear, here with my co-host Happy. Thanks again to Zay on production, and thank you all for being here. See you all very soon.